Hi everyone, this is Eileen with Grow, and we are back in the same spot we were last week because we're going to expand on last week's hands-on demonstration. So if you remember, my daughters helped us do an activity from Project Wet called the Rainy Day Hike, where we looked at different surfaces in our area around our home, and we predicted whether or not water would soak into those surfaces, and then we tested that prediction. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to do something called a site assessment. And so Grow has a program called Rainscaping. And in that program, we help people make their yards more friendly to water quality. And the way we start that process is through having someone from our office come out and do a site assessment. And that's where we come and we look at your home, we look at what's going on in your yard and help you figure out what's the next best step. So I'm going to show you how we do that at our house today. And hopefully, if you're interested in having us come out and do that for you, you can go to our website at lgrow.org/rainscaping, and you can request a site assessment there. Or you can follow the steps that I'm showing you today and do your own. So the first thing to do is, just like we had the kids do last week, is to create a map of your property. And so this is my map of our house, and I drew it from above, so you can see this is the outline of the roof. And on the map, it's important that you do a few things. One, you want to have an arrow, a north arrow, to orient yourself which direction is north, south, east, and west. That'll be important for planting that you want to do later, to know what kind of light you're getting in different areas. And then draw on your map any important features. So what I drew on here is my roof line. I also included downspouts for my gutters, because that's where water is coming off my roof and where it's heading. I included garden beds. And then I also included areas where there's a major slope, as you'll see as we go along through the property. So have your map. That map is going to come with you as we walk around the property, and you'll make notes on it about things that are important. I'm going to use our site assessment form, which you can see, but you don't have to know too much about. It just has questions about each of the things that we need to go through. So first of all, the most important thing about your site is that we want water to slow down, spread out, and soak into the ground before it enters the storm drain. And so we want to know what kind of soil we have in this ground so that we know how well water can soak in. And there's a few ways you can do that. One of them is to go online and use a tool called the Web Soil Survey to look it up, but that's complicated. The other thing you can do is simply dig a hole. I don't have a hole here, but if you've got kids who like to dig holes, dig a hole about 12 inches in diameter and about 12 inches deep. You fill that hole with water, let it all soak into the ground, and then you fill it up again, and then measure every hour how long it takes for that water level to go down. If your water level is going down less than 1 inch per hour, you have really wet, saturated soil. If it's going down somewhere between 1 and 3 inches per hour, you've got pretty average soil. And if it's going down faster than that, then you have really dry soil that water is going to drain through very quickly. In our house, we generally have pretty dry, sandy soil. So the next step is to walk with the owner of the property. I guess I'm interviewing myself here because I'm the only one, and to ask questions about what's going on. So first we're going to walk around and we're going to look at the downspouts, and we're going to look at areas where we have issues. So you can see right here, last week you saw our rain garden. This is an area where we have a gutter coming down off of our garage, and we were having a lot of water fill up in this area and actually overflow to where you can see this kind of black line and go down the hill, and it was causing problems on the driveway and some erosion on the hill. And so we actually dug this out, created a rain garden, and planted native plants in there to help soak up some water. So now we'll move on to some other areas of the house. One of the questions we always ask is, do you have downspouts? Because if you don't, it's a lot harder to direct the water that comes off of your roof into a garden or something. Hey, we're doing a video. Do you want to help Lydia? This is Lydia. We have some chicks that they want to introduce you to, but we'll do that later because I'm busy right now. Thank you. So on my map, you can see I have here, we can orient ourselves properly, this little garden here. So this is another area where we don't really have a problem, but we do, you can see, have another downspout coming off the other side of the garage that goes into this garden. We didn't make it a formal rain garden, but we did kind of depress it a little bit to help keep some of that water, help it pond there and not overflow onto the driveway again. Because as you might have noticed, our driveway's pretty bad and got a lot of problems, so we're trying to keep water from ponding on the driveway. So you come around the front here. One of the things you notice on this property is that we have a lot of really steep slopes. So if you look, you can see we're basically on a ravine. We've got deep steep hills, we've got steep slopes, and that can be a real problem when you've got storm water coming down and washing over that. It can cause washouts and erosion. So we are really thinking hard about how to take care of that. That's really important to us, and that's something that as a site assessor I would make note of on my notes as I'm going through. You can see here, it was an old garden bed that we're not using anymore. We're repurposing it into some new types of gardening and making different types of ground cover there. Right now this is all uncovered, so if we were to have a big storm, we could see a lot of erosion from this site, but hopefully we'll get it fixed up before we have our next big rainstorm. But this is an area where I could make notes about, well, I can see it gets pretty good sun. We have overall a lot of shade on this property, but we get pretty good sun in this particular area, and so this is a nice place you could think about planting native plants in order to help beautify your yard, but also help soak up some of that storm water. So we're coming around the front side of the house here now, over towards our side deck. So this is one of the areas that I'm going to note on the map as a problem. So I brought a red pencil to note problem areas on the map. You can see we have a downspout coming down, and it goes right onto the ground, and it has started to wash out a little hole here. And actually when we get a really big rain, water comes down this spout, fills up this washout, makes it worse, and it makes a little trail down the hill here. And you can't see it because it's leaves covering it, but we have a eroded area on the hillside right here. That's a result of some of the issues with this downspout. So I'm going to put in this area kind of a big star, and I'm going to write erosion. That's an area that I want to work on, try to fix. Okay, so we'll come along the side here. We have a little path coming up the hill. Again, we've got a downspout right here on the deck. I actually forgot to put this one on. I'm going to have to add it to my map. Good thing I'm ground truthing it. We have a downspout that comes onto the deck, and one of the problems that's on the deck here is that this water comes right onto the wood, and it's causing some issues here. This wood is pretty old, it's starting to get rotten, and so that's another issue that I'm going to put a red star by, as we need to figure out a better way to handle that water. Now that, that's not a water quality problem. This isn't going to cause the river down the road here to get polluted, but it is causing a problem for our home, and so that's the kind of thing you want to take note of too. Not just what's a water quality problem, but what's a problem for the way that your family wants to use this space. And this is an assessment you can do at your school properties too. When you're back in school, you can go outside and you can say, where are places that we're having trouble, maybe on the playground. Maybe there's a spot that gets really wet and muddy, and then when it gets cold, that spot freezes and kids slip on it. That's the kind of thing you'd want to put on your map so that you know you want to work on dealing with that issue in that area. All right, so coming up along, one of the things that we note when we're doing site assessments is whether or not there are any invasive species on the property. This is one tiny, we've been pulling a lot of this, so we haven't seen very much, but we've been pulling a lot of garlic mustard. As you can see here, this is a common invasive in the woodland areas, and we would make a note of that on there. You always want to pull that. Oh, the root didn't come up with that. But you can make a note of that on there and have that be something that you write into your plan for your property for something you want to take care of. So I'll write that on my map. I've got garlic mustard. The other big invasive that we have on our property, not right next to the house, but further out into the woods, is Oriental Bittersweet, which is a vine that can cause a lot of trouble for native species. And there's resources that you can access to help manage those invasive species on your property if that's something that's important. We'll come up the hill here. We've got another downspout at the corner of the house. We can see that something's not quite right here. We have an issue with this downspout. It's disconnected. It's supposed to be attached. But this downspout comes out, normally when it's attached properly, like this. And it comes out, and you can see again, we've got another one of those kind of washout areas where the water isn't really doing the right thing. It's going to be causing some star right here as another area where I want to deal with the water, the way it's coming off the house. So as you can see, a lot of this is using, even though I have a questionnaire with a bunch of questions on it, really what's important is creating a map of your property and documenting the problems that you have and the things you want to deal with related to water quality. So we come around the back. Now we're in this little area of our backyard, and I've noted on the map some big trees, and I've noted the direction of the slope. So you can see these purple arrows here. That's another important feature. Think about what direction water flows on your property. So if you're trying to spread it out, soak it in, slow it down, you got to figure out where it's going and how you can intercept it and help it to slow down. So we are on a big hill, so it's pretty easy. Everything is just coming down this way. So this gutter, this is one that we had a lot of issues with, and we, at least for now, fixed them by having the gutter come down into a little tray here. And what happens when we get a big rain is the water comes in, it goes through these rocks, and we had a little puddle here at the bottom, but we don't really mind that. It's not causing any trouble. So I think this one's fine for now. We're happy with that. All right, let's come around the back side. It's been a week since you guys have seen these girls. They're here showing you their little chick friends who are now our new babies.
This one's black black. I think this one's black black. This one's mine.
So in the corner we have another ornamental tree here. It is important to note the local yard, things you want to keep or things you want to change. These are things we want to keep. We've got this beautiful crabapple blooming right now, so we want to make sure that any plans we make for our site don't get rid of that tree. So now we're almost back around to the other side where we started, and I'll just show you again on the map where we're at. We've come around this way, come around through here, and now we're standing right here in the corner. And you look down the hill here, you can see we have a downspout at the top right here, and we have some stairs going down with a retaining wall, and we have kind of a situation going on this side of the hill here. This is kind of a fun one to show because we've had a lot of trouble in this spot and we haven't really quite fixed it yet. So you can, if you have ideas, give us suggestions in the comments. But we've got a gutter that comes down here that drains a huge portion of the back side of this roof. So a lot of water comes down the hill here. And our house has a slab foundation, so there's not a basement that we're worrying about right now, so we can actually infiltrate water a little bit closer to the house than normally people would suggest. So we've been trying to create this series of ponds coming down this slope so that as water comes down it gets a chance to infiltrate and not just this hill here, because it was causing some erosion, it was washing. We still actually have, you can see, a lot of sand washed onto the steps as a result of the way water is moving through the system here. So we want to kind of slow that down as much as possible. So we started out making this system of ponds filled in with rocks. It looks really pretty. This part works really good. The top part is good. And then now water comes down and it's eroded a bunch of sand out from under these rocks. And this was actually a whole nice dip full of sedges that got full of sand. So we've got some problems here that I'm going to mark in the middle of this garden and at the bottom. So water is doing a better job of infiltrating here, but it is still coming down, and you can see, if you come a little closer, we've got a little bit of gully erosion happening here under these leaves where it's really washing out this soil, and that soil is coming down and making its way down here and getting deposited on this step and on the driveway down here, and that's something that we really want to work on and really want to deal with. So I'm going to write that on my map as well. So we've come all the way around, we've looked at any issues we have. One thing we haven't looked at actually that we can go down and do is look at the driveway, because we've been looking at the way water comes off the house and some of the pervious surfaces where water can soak in, but it's really important that you pay attention to your impervious surfaces, so those places where water doesn't soak in, and figure out where water moves on the driveway. So because we have such an uneven driveway, we get big ponds of water in the driveway, right here under this trailer and kind of down the middle here. So that's another thing that, especially with the freeze-thaw cycles in the early spring and the middle of winter and fall, it's causing some more further damage to our driveway. So that's another area that we just want to be aware of, and I'll just put like a big spot here of like areas where water pools and is causing, you know, problems that we want to deal with in the future. So once you've got a really good map of your site, then you can go back through and look at some of these questions that maybe you didn't address yet. And so that's things like, are there areas where you don't currently have plants that you could revitalize with native plants? And I think there are definitely some places on our property. One of our challenges is deer, and so they eat everything. So we'll try, but I'm gonna say, yeah, there's spots we could do that. And then if you wanna plant plants, what are the kinds of things that you're interested in? Do you want birds, butterflies, pollinators, lots of different things, medicinal plants, lots of different things you can take into account when you're thinking about what type of plants you want. And you would let us, as the site assessors, know that, because then we could help you pick out what kinds of plants you like. We have a place on our website on the elgrow.org/rainscaping where you can look up a native plant list. And if you download that list, it'll give you, you can sort it based on light requirements, soil requirements, the height of the plants, the color of the plants, to give you a good sense for what would work on your property. The 5 practices that we promote under the rainscaping program are rain barrels, which are not a good practice for our house just because we don't have a place to use the rainwater. But for a lot of people, that's a great way to capture the water that comes out of their gutters and use it to water your gardens. We don't want a rain barrel because we don't have any like vegetable gardens or anything to water with it. The other one we do is native plants, which we talked about. We promote rain gardens, which, as you can see an example of here, it's not very filled in right now because it's early in the season, but this will get full and lush, and the plants in this garden, their long roots will soak up the water that comes out of that spout. We promote trees. We have a lot of trees on our property, so we're probably not going to plant more trees here. And then the other one is riparian or shoreline planting. So it doesn't apply to this property because we don't have any shoreline, but if you have a stream or a pond on your property, if you plant plants along the shoreline, that helps. Those plants will help hold the shoreline in place and also filter pollutants out and improve water quality along that body of water. So it's always important when we go through our assessment to think about what things are right for this property. So a rain barrel is a great practice, and it might be really good for you, but it's not good for this property. So I'm just going to skip the whole section on rain barrels because I don't want to do it. I don't want to have a rain barrel. But important things to note if you do want to have a rain barrel are, 1, that you have gutters and downspouts to direct the water into, and 2, that you have a use for that water, so it doesn't just sit there and get full of mosquitoes. You do also need to sometimes check if you have a neighborhood or a homeowners association if they have rules about having rain barrels. Sometimes they do. So, considerations for a rain garden. So I put this rain garden here because I could direct water into it easily, but I also already had this garden bed I could dig out. Generally, you want to direct water away from your house into a garden and make sure the garden is sized big enough compared to the size of the roof that's draining to it. And we have tools on our website for you to look at that. Also, make sure that you're not planting your rain garden in your drain field for your septic system if you have one. So if you don't know if you have a septic system, you should find out. If you don't receive a water bill from the city, you probably have a septic system. And that means you need to take care of it. And we have information on how you can do that on our website. The tree assessment, again, we don't need more trees. We have a lot of trees. We don't only have space to plant more trees. If you want to plant a tree, say you're in the city, you want a street tree, again, make sure you check with your municipality to make sure if you need to get a permit or anything, and that it's not going to interfere with any wires or anything above your head. And then, as I mentioned, we don't have a riparian buffer. We don't have a waterway through our property, but if we did, I would encourage you to plant native plants along that buffer. And so if I was doing this as a real assessment, I would have asked all those questions to myself or the person I was interviewing. I would have written all the information down. I would have taken that map back to the office and come back with a written explanation of what I think you should do, what's the best practice for your property to help protect water quality, and then I would give you some resources on how to implement that. So if that's something that's interesting to you, you can contact us through our website, and I'll put the link down in the comments so you can do that, and we'll come out and take a look at your property and help walk you through what to do and how you can implement it. If you have any questions, feel free to contact us that way through the website. And if you liked this, I hope you share it with others and go get out to your own backyard and do your own assessment. Thanks so much for joining us today. We'll see you soon.